Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Break Free from Your Monkey Mind podcast. This is series 4, episode 2. And this week, me and Leanne are joined by Mark Dunbar. So first of all, hi Leanne, how are you this week?
I'm good, thank you, Tony. Hello, everybody, and hi, Mark.
Hello.
And I say every week in this podcast, I've said it for years about hi, good morning, good evening, welcome, wherever you are in the world. Well, this time actually is suit because Mark is in the other end of the world. For us, he's in Australia. So thank you very much, Mark, for actually being an evening for joining as well. So yours is in the morning. Was it about 7:15 in the morning?
Yeah, 20 past.
7 in the morning. Right, so thank you, Ed, for that. First of all, just so that people get to know a little bit you before we get into why you're here, tell them a little bit who Mark is.
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Who Mark is. So I am a father, I am a husband. I have a 3-year-old menace who runs around at home and keeps me very active. I work in IT, so I sit down a lot. A lot of my day is sitting down on my backside and in the school environment. So I used to work in aged care, now I work in schools, and the two different ends of the spectrum, I guess, which is great. I love my job. I love where I work. I love where I live. Living in Australia is just phenomenal and has a lot of benefits. I have a condition called Ankylosing Spondylitis. I'll jump straight into that. It is...
I'm glad you pronounced that, Mark.
Have a go if you like.
Oh, I'm not going to embarrass myself.
So Ankylosing spondylitis is an autoimmune disease. It's a form of inflammatory arthritis. It is slowly fusing my spine together. Sitting down for long periods is quite difficult when you get into it. But you have to balance your day out with what you're actually doing, so sitting down, standing up, whatever, with actual movement around. If you stand up, your back sort of seizes, or I find that mine does. Seizes up and causes pain and all sorts of nastiness. So where I'm at with the disease is I was diagnosed when I was about it was just after I met Leanne, actually. So it was about 24 years ago. I was diagnosed, and how that diagnosis came about. I used to compete actively in martial arts. I went from one day competing, training, coming home, did my usual stretches for the evening, then went to bed. Woke up the following morning with very heavy flu-like symptoms. I thought I was getting the flu, which I probably did anyway, thinking back on that. And then I went to get out of bed and found that I couldn't. My back had seized. I had issues with my hips and SI joint, sacroiliac joint, and knees. So it sort of struck pretty well overnight. From there, it was a long road to an actual diagnosis. It was about 18 months, 2 years. Heaps of visits to the GP, multiple GPs, general practitioners, doctors, then to eventually got onto a rheumatologist who said I met the classical definition of ankylosing spondylitis. So there was some blood tests. So in your blood, you've got inflammatory markers. So if they go up, usually stress, when you're sick, all of that sort of thing, they peak, right? Mine went up, peaked, and didn't come back down. So that was one of the big tellers. And I also have a gene called HLA-B27, which is the active gene for ankylosing spondylitis. Everybody has it, right? It's only when it becomes active that it becomes a problem. And there are a lot of theories that go around, and there'll probably be a bunch of rheumatologists listening to this now, and we'll call fertilizer on that, but it's, I think that flu kicked off the genetic change that sparked the AS, basically. So, and then from there until now has been filled with non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. I did that for 12 months, ruined my stomach. So that was, I was on about 2,500 milligrams of anti-inflammatories a day. They didn't work. They just made me sick. So we ditched that and moved on to the biologics. Now, a biologic injection, sort of like brand names of Enbrel, Simponi, Humira, Cimzia, a few of those creatures. I cycled through all of those over the next couple of years with varying degrees of success. So AS is one of those gifts that keeps on giving. So you get, as an added side effect, migraines, chronic migraines. I was getting, I'd say I was getting one a week of a decent migraine, and then you'd get one every few weeks that'd last a couple of weeks, which threw you in hospital, put you on a drip, go home after that. Basically, that was it. Uveitis or iritis, which is the reddening of the eye. It's the inflammation of the layers in your eye. So your eye goes red, everything goes blurry, everybody looks like they have a visible aura, and it's either, you know, grey, washed out, that sort of thing. Very rarely would you get it in both eyes. I got it in both eyes once.
Of course.
So, yeah, why not? Pile on. So yeah, that was basically the lead up to it. Now, I'm on a phenomenal drug now called infliximab or Remicade. It is a biological infusion where you go into hospital, get admitted, get the Remicade infusion over a few hours. Some people tolerate it differently as well, which is awesome. So I'm on a cycle with this young guy. He's about 26, and our Remicade infusions match up. So we have a chat every time we go into the infusion lounge. He can tolerate a fast push with the drug. So he's in and out in like an hour and a half. I'm jealous. It takes about 3 hours for me because my body just can't handle it. I get really sick, weak and tired and disoriented. So that wipes me out after that. So I drive home, and then luckily where I live, everything's like 10, 15 minutes away. So by the time I get home, I'm in the throes of being affected like that, and it knocks me out for the rest of the day, which is cool. So when you're trying to juggle family and all of that sort of thing as well. One of the big side effects or bonuses of AS, and I use the term bonus very, very loosely, is the mental health side of things. As you wake up, I'll run through my day in a minute. You wake up sore, stiff, and in pain because of the like significant pain because of the stiffness, because you haven't moved all night, that sort of thing. So you get, every pain scale is different. It's individual, okay? Their pain scale is generally 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being, yeah, I can tolerate it, get up, walk around, that sort of thing. My standard base level day is a 6 on my pain scale. A 10 on my pain scale is passing kidney stones without assistance. So that end is a 10. When you're sitting at a 6 every day, the mental health side of things takes a huge knock. You get depressed and angry, which is very hard when you're a dad, you know, because you don't want to yell at your family. You don't want to snap at your son, your daughter, your wife. But it does happen occasionally because of the pain, the accumulative pain of the day just blows your head out. And I have a very lovely supporting wife who helps a fair bit. So it's good to have that sort of support network there. But yeah, so you wake up, you're sore, and then you've got to figure out, this is where I'm at. I have to make it until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. How am I going to do that? You have to plan every action. You have to plan your day, and then those plans change because of the pain that you're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to manage everything and be successful at work, be successful at home, and have some sort of quality of life. I understand that there are heaps of people in Australia with AS that are on a disability pension, and I do not discriminate against them. I wish them all the best, but that's just not me. Like, I've got to work. I need a distraction. I've got to keep moving. I've got to do things, you know, run around, all that sort of stuff. So it's like, yeah, you got to go to work. So that's another thing you've got to manage in amongst all of your pain and everything. So how my day starts is I'm awake generally from 3 o'clock in the morning. That's just when my body wakes up and starts screaming at me, hey, you need to get up and move around. So I start at 3. It takes me about 20 minutes to get out of bed with, like, because your body is still warm while you're in bed. You start with your initial stretches and figure out, right, what hurts the most and how can I deal with that today? So as an example, this morning, woke at 3, got out of bed at 3:30. In that half an hour, I basically stretched my legs, my knees, my lower back, focusing on my hips and SI joint. So, and there are a bunch of stretches you can find on YouTube and whatnot that help with AS, especially some of the bed bound or chair bound ones. They're pretty cool. So I throw all of that in there. Then from there, because it's an inflammatory disease, you get hot or you feel hot. And a lot of people react differently to my next step. I get up and I go and have a spa. Okay, I jump in the hot tub.
That's the bit I'm always jealous about. When you message me at that time in the morning saying, I'm getting in the spa, and I'm like, great. I'm not.
Yeah, you'd freeze, that's why. So we're in summer down here and it's awesome. Yeah, so I go and soak in the spa for an hour. That helps me relax my muscles, helps me get in the right frame of mind to go through the day, right? So I'm in there for an hour, annoyingly, Anne, text messages and stuff. So from there, stretch in the spa, get out of the spa, and then go and roll on my Pilates roller, foam roller thing. I've got some stretches that I do on that. And then there are some very good yoga clips and yoga instructors on YouTube. I follow 2 or 3, and I do that as my morning routine, as well as getting back into my martial arts stretches.
So are these videos that you find on YouTube, etc., are these things that you've researched yourself or ones that your doctors put you in touch with?
No. So I have found them myself. The doctors and rheumatologists in Australia are phenomenal, but they don't say, oh, you know, go and look at this person or go and look at this, go and do this. It's all subjective, and it's all you got to wonder whether they get a kickback from half of the stuff that they do.
Yeah,
prescribe.
sure.
And yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I've found all of those, and There are a few specific for ankylosing spondylitis that are very, very, very good. But generally, I just do some yoga, do some martial arts stuff, and then start my day. So my day starts 3 hours before my wife and son get up, and it'll finish probably 3 hours after they go to bed, because I have to stretch and wind down and do all of that. So that's what my day looks like. And in there's work. I travel a bit for work, so I drive maybe an hour and a half once every couple of days in each direction. But so that's my day. And working in IT, you're moving heavy equipment, laptops in bulk, computers, backup battery power supplies, all of that sort of stuff. So it becomes quite difficult to make it through the day sometimes, and they're the days that you fall back onto the heavier meds, like the tramadols, the diazepam, Valium for muscle spasms, and things like that. And I'm trying to get off all of that and trying to get away from it. And it does work if you apply the right mindset to it and the right headspace. How I deal with the pain throughout the day and without trying to go to those heavier meds is by basically, I'm going to probably cop some ridicule off this, but I break my head into different headspaces. Okay. One headspace deals with the pain, and that sits there, and I can manage that, wall it off, close the door and walk away. Does that make sense?
It does.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So pain's over there. Deal with the right here and the right now. That's my focus headspace. I've recently been diagnosed with an indeterminate tremor in my right side with Parkinsonian characteristics. Now, there is a couple of papers out there linking ankylosing spondylitis and Parkinson's disease because of the inflammation and the inflammation markers throughout your blood system and how it affects your head and your brain and the brain makeup. So I'm still working down that path, which is awesome. So I've got a headspace devoted to controlling the tremors, and that takes a lot of focus. So what's that? That's 3 headspaces. And then there's the 4th headspace, which is I deal with long-term things in that headspace. Like I've got a project coming up. What do I need to do? What do I need to work on? That sort of stuff. So I keep that to the side. So there's my 4. The here and the now headspace also deals with mood and trying to focus on what's going on there, so that I'm not, so that I'm present in the moment, but I'm also mindful of what actions will come from that. So you need to be aware of, and my lovely wife gets on me for this all the time, is how I say things. I don't intentionally mean to say something that makes me sound like a bit of a unhappy person, but that's just how it comes out sometimes. And that's all because of how I'm managing the pain and how I'm managing the day. If I have to repeat myself one more time to my son to put pants on around the house, that is like, that's the level,
Hence why you're not doing this from home tonight or this morning.
Oh, correct. Yeah, he's going to preschool today. So the argument about putting pants on is a good thing. Like, it will continue. And
glad to hear that part. He's got to preschool, he's got them on there. Yeah, I'm glad of that. But could have been a bit more awkward.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mark. And for the honesty. A lot of times it's so difficult to open up and tell people what you've got to go through. But knowing there'll be people outside here, because I know the things that I've been through and I am through, I can relate to a lot of you're saying, because if you listen back to the first episode of this, you'll hear a lot of what I talk about in it, what you just mentioned. But one of the things that for people that always try and understand this is, how did they not know when it was happening? I know you said when you first got it, you felt as though it was a night you had the flu, you went to bed and then woke up and this happened. Was there, looking back on it now with retrospect, any signs at all you could say leading up to that part that maybe there was other things that it had happened but you didn't realise?
Yeah. So with the martial arts training, like, you develop a reasonably high pain threshold through your martial arts training. And I recommend everybody do a martial art. Like, hands down, it is one of the best things to keep you moving, keep your mind active, and hey, you might even learn to defend yourself at some point. A few things leading up to it that sort of, you think back on it now and you do that, 2020 hindsight is a phenomenal thing. From about the age of 13, 14, which is roughly when you get diagnosed with AS, it's right on that borderline of juvenile arthritis and AS and rheumatoid. That's when it sort of starts. I noticed my knees were sore. I had hip pain around my SI joint, so where your hips join to your spine, that hip there. And occasionally I get a sore back. Well, I just put it down to the martial arts training, overdoing it, all of those sorts of things. Because, a young adolescent male in martial arts, you're trying to outdo everybody around you. You're trying to do your best, and, you've got a little bit of pain. We'll suppress that, put that back, focus on what you're doing now, that sort of thing. Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, and I think it was the knees and the hips that gave it away for me. Now, a lot of people are different. You just might get lower back pain, or you may have pain in between shoulder blades that you've had to deal with for like 4 or 5 years, and nobody's really given you an answer to it. But I will say, I was seeing an amazing osteopath when I was at home, and she said, "You're coming in here once a month. There's something not right. I can feel it in your body. There's something not right." And I just sort of, whatever, blew it off then. But yeah, now 100%. She was onto it. My body was telling me what was going on, and I just wasn't listening. I listen to my body more now, or otherwise I get crippled. But, looking back on it, that was it.
I think it's right, because I know all people do it, but it's definitely a male thing, is that when you are younger and you have these pains, and that, a lot of people think it's growing pains, or it's, because the sports that you do, and we don't take enough awareness of it. And also, we're conditioned and preconditioned to actually think you can work through anything like that. These little pains and niggles will go away. It's not going to stop you doing what you're trying to do. And as you said, there's one thing that really stuck out for me when you're talking about that and bringing it up to date now, with the way you describe how you have to deal with a day and your martial arts thing you're doing it. And one of the things, that they said is so great about that is because one thing martial arts teaches people, everybody talks about it as well, it's a fighting force or it's a defense thing. It's the discipline that actually teaches you that really helps with situations like this. The way you describe your day and how you have to decompartmentalize how you do everything and put things in. Your martial arts training, luckily, gave you a way of doing that. And he says a lot of people who, no offense to them, but they don't work. They choose it's not to do. Do you do that choice because when you focus on your job and you focus what you're doing, it takes your mind off the pain?
Partly, yeah. There's a big portion of it is I don't want to let it control my life. And if I give into it and let the pain take over, to me, my personal opinion, it's as if I've failed. I've failed to keep myself in line, disciplined, as you said, on that path, and I'm failing my family around me. I love to take my son to the park. if I gave into the pain, I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do half of the awesome things that I do every day. Like working in the schools, you throw in with whatever's going on and try and help there. If I gave in to the pain, I couldn't do that, and I wouldn't have, you know, the relationships, the family, the friends. That's a big thing as a support network around you. I'd lose that if I gave up. I'm just too stubborn though.
When you were trying to find how to deal with that, because that's always a problem. And you learn how to cope first of all before you learn how to deal with something. So you had to cope with it and deal with that. And I know you said it's great for you because you've got a sort of infrastructure around you, the way your wife, you've got that. But what was it like for you? And how did you go about when you were going to GPs and all they want to do is give you medication that's not really working? Did you ask them, was there any other options available? Was there anything else you could do apart from medication? And if so, what kind of suggestions did they give?
It sort of harks back to one of the comments I made before. In the United States, I think this is more prevalent, but I reckon most of the doctors get a kickback from the drug companies that sell you drugs. Like conspiracy theory number one. Like they said, my rheumatologist at that point in time said, this is the treatment path. We shall not deviate from the treatment path. So he didn't take into account the osteopath, physiotherapy, martial arts, massage, all of that sort of stuff. It was just basically, here are your painkillers, here are your anti-inflammatories, do it.
But at any time, did anybody come to you and talk to you about your mental health? Because as you said, you were struggling with that throughout the pain. Now it's all right sticking you on a path and saying, you know, don't deviate onto anything else, don't go off onto another path, stay on this. But what about your mindset? Did anybody take care of that throughout your process of, you know, your path that you was being put on?
Outside of my dad, like we do daily debriefs, and I think that's very important, and I'm trying to get my son into that as well. You know, a daily debrief. Tell me about your day. Where are you at mentally? That sort of thing. You know, what challenges did you have? How did you overcome them? Try and learn from it a little bit. So my dad was awesome with that, and still is. Like I ring mum and dad every day. If your viewers don't do that, I recommend you do that. Get a debrief. Have a debrief with a loved one. You know, wife, husband, father, whatever. It's up to you. But no mental health care plan at all. Right up until I started with my new GP. His policy is, if you have a chronic condition, if you suffer from chronic pain, you have to have a mental health care plan. And that involves going to a counsellor and talking about it. So,
how have you found that to help? Because I know obviously you've started doing that now. So is that helping?
Yes, it is. To talk to somebody who's outside of the circle, so to speak, helps a lot. So, and as a bonus of working within an organisation that cares about its employees, they give you 6 visits a year to a counsellor of your choosing that they pay for. So that helps with the funding as well, because it's not cheap. Not cheap. Yeah.
And that's something that's difficult for people here to understand is because we've got the NHS, the National Health Service, we don't pay for a lot of things. You pay different ways. You pay through your taxes, but you don't pay directly. But for everything you've been through, it must be also a worry with that, with the monetary side of it, the concern if you need treatment, you need a lot of things. How do you deal with that?
The financial stress is high with the cost of everything going up. Like we're very lucky in Australia that we've got the PBS, the prescribed medical thing, similar to the NHS over with you guys, but we pay a gap. So, well, sort of a gap. The Remicade itself is like 2.5 grand a vial. I take 5 vials. So I know in some other countries, you have to foot the bill for that. 10 grand a month, 10 grand every 6 weeks would suck. I'd turn to alternative medications at that point, which would be a bit cheaper. But like you go to the rheumatologist, you sit there and you have a chat with them for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. On the way out, drop $300 on the table and go away. You know, each specialist is about $300 a visit here in Australia. Well, from my opinion, you do get a gap payment back from Medicare, which is depending on what service you've gone to and that sort of thing. It's anywhere between $100 and $150 that you get back from those appointments. But most of the medication, so my medication bill is around $300 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not cheap. That's all the migraine meds. That's all of the medications that I need to make my day. You know, so go from point A to point B. There's a lot of people who have replaced a lot of their meds with CBD and THC. And the big problem here in Australia with that is, or in New South Wales where I live, if you're under the influence or if you've had THC in your system recently, you basically park your car on the side of the road when you then do a random drug test, and you've got to stay there for 24 hours. And then you've got that drug record on your permanent record. It sort of makes you sound like you're at school, doesn't it? Your permanent record will haunt you. But yeah, like the financial stress is high.
So have you tried anything else apart from the medication? Obviously keeping the medication going, but have you tried any other complementary therapies to help you?
I know this really amazing young lady who's got me onto celery juice in the morning.
Tony
must be a really good hypnotist to do that with you, Mark. I can tell you that. It's not worked with me yet, but she does try. Still not working.
But you're actually going to tell us now, Mark, that it actually does help you, don't you? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Like celery juice has some anti-inflammatory properties as well. Throw in there carrot, pineapple, green apple, and ginger. If you've got fresh turmeric, throw that in there too. Turmeric's a great anti-inflammatory. I've got a mum and dad put me onto this. It's a fermented turmeric ginger.
Tony,
drink.
your face is just saying it all now.
Oh, I'd love that. I love turmeric. I love that. I love ginger.
It's the celery, isn't it? It's doing it for you. Yeah.
No, but I like the way Mark's described it because he's actually put all these other things in with the celery so it tastes a bit better as well.
And I believe, Mark, you're actually growing your own celery now, aren't you? Your lovely wife told me that you're now starting to grow your own celery. So there you go. That's one up on just drinking it.
Yes. It's also because it's damn expensive. It's like $5 a bunch at the moment. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you find that what you said earlier, Mark, was a really good point about whether it is conspiracy theories, people think or not. But the big pharmaceutical companies do have an impact on what GPs can actually do. But when you say to people about going trying to look at something's healthier option, it's so much more expensive than it is to do anything else. And that's the difficulty for a lot of people is where they get that balance. They know things could be healthier, be better for them, but they just don't have the affordability to go and actually do that and have them. So celery's not an option because it's too expensive. Right, so we know that now. Right, don't buy celery in Australia; it's too expensive. But
Tony, it's working.
It works. Give it a go.
Seriously, though. But if to finish this off, then, if there's one thing that you would say to anybody who's going through something similar to get them through the day, what would the one thing be?
Headspace. You need to know. You need to know how to handle the day. If you wall off your pain, lock it in a room, like physically, you're actually, the way that I do it is gather up all of the pain, put it into a box mentally. Like I will imagine putting it all into a box, going to that room, putting it in that room, locking the door. That's how I do it, right? Leanne and I have discussed using switches. Like imagine going to a big switchboard.
Yep.
Looking at, okay, so this switch controls the pain in my hands, the stiffness in my hands. I'll flick that off. It takes a lot of mental training to get it to, you flick it off and it stays off. There are times where the pain escapes the room, the pain escapes the switchboard, and it just becomes overwhelming. But the biggest thing is get control of your headspace, get control of your mind, or otherwise you won't be able to do anything. You'll end up a puddle on the floor in tears.
That's a really good point. One other option that Mark's just said there that can really help is some people can find it difficult to flick that switch and go straight from one extreme to the other. Why not imagine the dials? It's like a thermostat. When you look at a thermostat, you can turn it up and down, and just try turning down a notch or two at a time, just to get used to that. So take it down like 60% of the pain, 40%, 20%. So in your mind, you're actually working, gradually putting it down until you can get there. And once you get it off, it stays off. But yeah, any ideas like that are great for everybody to use. So thank you very much, Mark, for the insight, but also for, I said, the honesty and opening up and coming on here, because it's not easy to do that. So we do appreciate that. Also is that if, especially like in Australia, if there's people listening from Australia just now, this goes international, is there places are there or somewhere you could say that they could go and get advice, or was the best place in Australia to get information about the illness that you suffer from?
To get more information on ankylosing spondylitis and other arthritic diseases, Arthritis Australia, just Google that. They have a stack of information. One thing that we haven't discussed is the support for your support network as well. So while you're unloading on them, they've got to have someone to unload on as well. So whether it's their family, their friends, or I know a few people have leaned heavily on Beyond Blue in Australia, which is like a depression hotline that you can ring and talk to somebody. It's all anonymous. It's all very, very good. And they have great people on the other end of the phone. But we can't, while we're looking after yourself, you've got to look after those around you as well. And you can't take everything out on your wife or your husband or your significant other, right? You've got to look at it from that point of view as well. So Arthritis Australia, that has got some great resources on AS, rheumatoid, and other arthritic conditions. Great to pass that information on to your loved ones after you find the stuff that relates to what you're going through, because they need to know as well. There are a lot of people who make it through the day but don't make it past getting home, and they need that
communication
support
as well. So communication, keeping that line open of communication with yourself, the condition that you've got, obviously your loved ones, how they're feeling, and everything else. So taking care and looking after everybody.
And I think great what you said about your family as well, the extended family, your mom, your dad, things like that. People have to realise that as well, is that you need that whole infrastructure around you to deal with, because they all help each other as well, because they understand. But you need to, it's like having that constant dialogue. They need to know what you're feeling like to understand why you're acting a certain way. That's why it's so important to communicate, because if they don't understand why the mood changes, which is such a big thing with pain. People don't understand that. How every little thing can bother you. It doesn't matter if someone says something, they do something, it just builds up on you. So yeah, communicate everybody, talk to everybody. And as Mark says, then in Australia, that's where they go. In the UK, the NHS, if you look at the NHS website, it's got some great things on this, some great ideas on it, but also think outside the box. A bit like Anne was emphasising there, but earlier there. These things are, when you do go to the GPs, and that they're limited in where they can ask you to go. And the philosophy have always been about this podcast is, take the ownership to go to the GP and say, no, stop, before you write that script out, before you give me a prescription, what else, what other choices have I got first? Where else can I go? If you don't, I'm not going to help with that, you're more than happy, or we're happy for you to contact us. So contact me, Leanne, and we'll put you onto the right place where to find the help you need. We're not specialists in this, but we can find you somewhere to go. You can get the information that you require. That's the whole point of this. So thank you very much, Mark, for coming on. And thank you again for Leanne for joining us on here as the co-host as well. And we look forward to seeing you all next week again. So at the same time, same next week, 6 p.m. next Wednesday night. And we'll have a different guest on here with a different subject. We'll let you know what I need at the time. Okay, thank you, everybody, and take care of yourself and your families as well.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.